Optimum, let's connect more. Protect your devices today.
We mentioned the tweet from the outgoing president a moment ago. He delivered a message in a letter form that was released yesterday afternoon. And part of that tweet sort of reflects the message that he had. And Shannon, we're about to see him leaving the Oval Office for the final time.
And there's some serious choreography that goes in flipping the two families. There are about 90 White House staffers who stay there and actually prepare for the transition, moving in and out, furniture. You know, you don't pick up your own boxes and stuff when you're the president and you're leaving. There's a lot of help.
Yeah, indeed. So we will see this image, and we believe there's some audio on this clip, too. So let's pause for a moment and take in this historic event.
Morning, sir. Morning, sir.
How do you feel? The rain holding up.
So far, so good.
That's good.
How you feeling?
Feeling nostalgic? Of course.
Any final words for the American people?
Thank you.
Take care, sir.
Thank you, guys. Part of you relieved President Obama?
Hello, sir.
Hey, guys.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Keep the rain away, will you?
We're working on it.
One can only imagine the range of emotions and thoughts going through the mind of President Obama. He was asked there any final words for the American people, and he said, thank you. Classy move there.
Yeah, and asked if he was feeling nostalgic. He said, of course, and you could see there through the window he's leaving a letter behind, as is tradition for the next president. Words of wisdom, encouragement, those kinds of things. Maybe we'll get a peek at that letter.
Yeah, and we saw the letter for the American people yesterday, so at some point we're going to get some information about that. Screen left there is St. John's Church, which, just to the viewer at home, this is a small area. We're talking maybe a block and a half between St. John's Church, our location here at Lafayette Park, and the viewing stand in the White House behind us. And the Trump family is inside St. John's Church. That's a tradition that was started under FDR in the 1930s, and you've had several presidents go there to begin their day of inauguration. Bush 41, Bush 43, they all took part in a service at St. John's to begin this day. So that's what we're waiting on.
And I remember seeing
movements.
the Obamas going there 8 years ago, walking in, so just getting ready to take the office. And they both were so full of smiles and optimism and hope, and you could see that they were excited to take on this new job. It's got to be overwhelming for anyone.
You know, you think about, too, when you watch Trump move through these events here in Washington, so many in the media are, shall I suggest, in awe of what he has done and what he accomplished. And I think many folks at home probably feel the same way. My impression of Donald Trump for the past couple of days is a guy who is ready for the moment. He does not seem to be in awe of much or overcome by much of anything, especially at the Lincoln Memorial yesterday, Shannon. It is almost as if he is the same guy that walked on that stage in Cleveland, Ohio 17 months ago for that first debate. And did not do a walkthrough to see where the microphones are and the lights are and the cameras. And I thought, boy, is that a smart move? And what I realized is when he walked out there, he did not need the prep.
No.
Because in his mind and in his heart, he was ready for the moment.
And that's what I think he likes, to do things his own way, to tackle them his own way. And you're right, he does seem like he is chomping at the bit to get started. He's laid out very ambitious things he wants to do on day one, and he seems ready to go.
Yeah, so we'll await the departure from St. John's Church and then the handoff here at the White House behind us. President-elect Donald Trump says he will get down to work on day one, and that is today. But so much of his team still in flux. How much progress can we expect in the early days? And their campaign senior strategist now, we should say, and her senior advisor, and Kellyanne Conway in the red hat. Looks like Reince Priebus with his back to us. Kellyanne Conway has an extra special day today.
She does.
Because today is Kellyanne Conway's 50th birthday. And if you were to ask her where else she would celebrate her birthday, she'd say right here.
Can you imagine? I mean, she was one of the most senior-most women to ever pull off this kind of work in a campaign and a presidential run. Yeah, and for today to be her 50th birthday, what a celebration for her on many levels.
In about 15 minutes, we expect the outgoing First Family to be met with the incoming First Family. And Shannon, that is something that Tom Barrack, who has organized all the inaugural events on behalf of the Trump family, told us yesterday is something that he believes is the most intimate.
You need a website. Why not do it yourself? With Wix, you can create your own professional website. Choose from hundreds of designer-made templates. No matter what business you're in, you can get your website online today. Just drag and drop to create your site exactly the way you want. It's easy. Change your text. Choose one of
In this country and come from very different political ideologies, but we're told they've had many good conversations. Both President Obama and the President-elect Trump have talked about the fact that they've had these ongoing cordial conversations and advice, that Trump has appreciated the advice from Mr. Obama and has taken some of it to heart. The president saying the other day in his press conference he doesn't think he's going to take all of it to heart. He obviously has his own way of doing things, but now for them to sit down face to face with their wives and maybe parts of their families as well for this final handover. A very special time.
We are 2 hours and 23 minutes away.
All right. We've got our Chris Stirewalt standing by, Fox News politics editor, as we watch all of this play out. Chris, a lot is going to happen today, but there's a lot of conversation about the fact that some of the team that President-elect Trump would have liked in place may not get there as quickly as he had hoped. You know, a lot of confirmations on day one for President Obama. It's important to have your cabinet and national security team together. It's not going to be the exact same thing for incoming President-elect Trump.
Well, I'd say he's doing just fine overall. When we think about who has already made it over the transom, and he's got a Secretary of Defense. He has the core of a national security team. He with his Attorney General already having gone through his hearings, things are teed up in a pretty good way. What President-elect Trump is learning is the pipe doesn't get any. Congress can only process so much at a certain pace. It's a Republican Congress. They want to give him what he wants, but you can only do so much so fast because of the procedure and the process. You want to blow it up. You want to say we can do anything whenever, but the reality is you can't fit more in the pipe because the pipe doesn't get any bigger.
And Chris, while you're talking, we're looking live on screen. Former Vice President Dan Quayle there, stopping to take some selfies and some shots with folks with his USA hat and the number 45 on the side. I want to ask you about Mike Pompeo. He's currently a congressman. Of course, he is the nominee to head the CIA, has been through part of the vetting process and the nomination and confirmation process. But Senator Ron Wyden, a Democrat out of Oregon, wants to put the brakes, kind of pump the brakes on him for now. I mean, we know the numbers are there for most of these nominees to get through easily without any help from the Democrats. So why is Wyden going to hold him basically over the weekend? Because it sounds like on Monday, according to the Senate Minority Leader, that'll be the day that probably Mike Pompeo eventually gets the nod formally to head the CIA.
Wyden is a serious critic of the CIA, long-standing, and some pretty evident mistrust. When we think about the moment, the famous lie that James Clapper told when he was on the Hill, he said, "Are you collecting data in a large capacity on the American people?" And Clapper said, "No," and then that was later turned out because of Edward Snowden to be revealed to be not so. So that's Wyden. That's his passion in this, and he has a deep mistrust about domestic surveillance, et cetera. So he is, I would say in this case, it's less about Pompeo. It's more about his criticism of the office and surveillance and all of that stuff.
And we do know that the president-elect has asked a number of people who are in high-ranking positions with respect to national security, State Department, other places. He's asked them to stick around. We know at least 50 critical positions will stay in place until the transition, the replacement occurs for many of these folks. And again, we're looking live as the president-elect and his family have transitioned away from St. John's, literally a block. If
Yo, let me call you right back real quick.
Okay, Shop.
Are there waiting to greet them? Well, they are actually getting ready to say hello to the Vice President-elect and his wife as well, incoming. And a warm hello, Bill, there from one vice presidential family handing over to the other.
I know there's a microphone in there somewhere, so we will try and pick up what we can. But just take a moment and watch this.
The warm hugs, the warm handshakes, the welcome, I'm sure saying to them, you have no idea the adventure you're about to embark on.
No question. From the Naval Observatory, where the Vice President makes his home, the Bidens will be departing back to Delaware, Shannon. The way he has come to Washington going back to the age of 29 by way of Amtrak. Joe Biden told us yesterday he'll take the train out of town later today. And so now we await the next arrival for Donald Trump and his wife Melania. And think about how this town can change, not just politically, but socially. Donald Trump likes to go to these events. And one can make the case that President Obama was somewhat more insular, not that he did not like to attend, but perhaps will not attend as many as Mr. Trump will. And then Bush 43 was famous for making an early appearance.
Lights out.
And then going to bed early. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a different style and different approach. And based on what we have seen in the past 48 hours, Donald Trump has barely missed an event, a moment here in Washington. So here we go as we await Michelle and Barack Obama and the arrival of Donald John Trump and the next First Lady, Melania. Inside for a simple cup of tea. And Barack Obama, in about 2 hours and 15 minutes, will join a very unique club. He'll be an ex-president, and he will join, for one of the few times in American history, a club of ex-presidents that has 5 living members. Jimmy Carter, who will be here today, both Presidents Bush, 41 and 43, and Bill Clinton, who will be here also.
Number 45, Donald Trump, and you got to wonder what this conversation is they're having right now inside. It was very cordial welcome, of course, but you wonder what tidbits of wisdom or advice or questions that the Trumps may have. No one in the world knows what it's like, but somebody who has lived through this process and lived in that house and led this country.
And apparently they've had numerous conversations.
They have.
And we've been reporting on that for several weeks now. Juan Williams is with us now, Fox News political analyst and author of the book We the People. And Juan, good morning to you on this Inauguration Day. And Juan, I just reflect for us a moment. Go back to January of 2008. When you're watching Barack Obama, an African-American candidate for the Democratic nomination, win the Iowa caucus in Des Moines. And I remember, Juan, just as sure as I'm sitting here, the tears I heard in your voice, tears of pride and accomplishment, and how deeply that touched you and so many others. And 8 years later, how do you now frame the past 2 terms of an outgoing African-American president and Barack Obama?
Well, Bill, you're exactly right. I mean, Obama's victory in Iowa was emotional, and then, of course, you come forward to 2009 and his inauguration on what was an icy, cold, like near-zero temperature day in Washington. And, of course, this city and this mall behind me just mobbed with people to the point where Secret Service and security had to stop people from coming in. So that's the kind of optimism, the sense of making history, a break.
It's time for another episode of Beer Foodie in 5 with Fanta. It takes some serious skill to make the perfect Italian pizza. So what you'll need is a slice of toast, some curiously unbranded tomato sauce,
You think about his accomplishments. I'm sure that the Obama team would say that preventing a depression, we were in a deep recession coming out 08, start of 09, if you recall. But also, of course, the very controversial and polarizing Obamacare, the controversial polarizing climate care deal, the Iran nuclear deal, all of these issues absolutely divided not only the Congress, but the American people, the American media, and that's attending. That reality now extends to this moment as Obama leaves office and leaves the economy and so many of those international concerns to President-elect Trump.
Yeah. You know, Juan, you came to the White House as a young man in the 1980s covering Ronald Reagan. I know you remember that quite well. And here you have a meeting of the minds between Barack Obama and Donald Trump. And in so many ways, they could not be more different. Trump comes into office talking about health care and tax reform and immigration in ways that are diametrically opposed to the agenda that Barack Obama has pursued going back to January of 2009. And yes, we talk about a peaceful transition of power, but it must be a really difficult thing for him to hand the reins to someone who is so opposed to the agenda that he has pursued.
You're exactly right, and it goes beyond that. I think it's difficult to hand the reins to someone who was one of the leaders of the birther movement and someone who he did not give a lot of thought to as his successor. If you recall, he was dismissive at times of Donald Trump. Remember that famous moment at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and subsequently where he said, you know, Donald Trump may say things about me, but he'll never be president, and dropped the mic. Well, obviously, Donald Trump, Bill, is about to become president of the United States of America. But in terms of the agenda, I think the life experiences so different. And, you know, obviously, Barack Obama not only coming up in terms of his upbringing around the country, even around the world, but also then in terms of his education and the fact that he was a state elected official, state senator, then a U.S. senator, and so tapped into the history of the civil rights movement and the whole idea of progress and progressive agenda. That's different than a Donald Trump who basically grew up in New York City from Queens and then went to a military high school, then goes off to Fordham, University of Pennsylvania, the Wharton School, and is a businessman about making deals, real estate deals in that rough and tumble world in New York, and always pursuing the title of his book, of course, The Art of the Deal. So that's Donald Trump. He's not in touch with the kind of social change, social issues, social turmoil that Barack.
I believe that the main purpose of Radisa was to create job opportunities and to create job opportunities within our own community, to see our own community grow. So with that in mind, and as our dealers has increased, as our job has increased, it has allowed us the opportunity to acquire more staff. As a young female, it allows me the opportunity as well to impact my community, because being part of the ministry, it allows me to empower the youth in the ministry. It allows me to empower the youth around me.
A lot of thoughts about his own father, Bush 41, and his mother, Barbara Bush. Possible. The departure from the crowd yelling up to that helicopter was not something you would put on TV or even cable television, but this is the moment that happens every 4 years, in this case, every 8 years. Now, you talk about the agenda. Think about the power of the personality on behalf of a president. George Bush led the war on terror. It's us or them. Remember? Barack Obama got Obamacare done when he said, if not us, then who? If not now, then when? It was the power of his personality that got Obamacare through, and along with a lot of Democratic votes on behalf of Congress. Now you come to the personality of Donald Trump. And I mentioned the agenda, health care, tax reform, immigration. The power of the personality on behalf of the president is required in order to get so much of this done. Now, with regard to Donald Trump, he's got a Republican House and a Republican Senate. But at what point do you find and feel the gears of Washington perhaps slowing down the motion that you would like, especially as a private businessman who can walk down the hall and talk to his attorneys and talk to his other associates and actually get something done? Well, in private practice, that's possible in America. In Washington, it's a very stubborn thing.
It's very difficult, but you know, I just want to go back to what you were saying about the power of personality, because Donald Trump has a unique, and I don't think there's any argument, powerful personality. Remember, you know, he was up against, was it 16 other Republicans, and really stood out from the very start. Even when people didn't give him a significant chance, didn't think that he could go up against some of the political professionals, it was his personality, the branding, and the fact that he was so clear in his message that stood out. And of course, that was also the case in the general election. As he comes to Washington, though, he's going to have to use that power of personality and the fact of his surprising election in dealing with Republican leadership on the Hill. So a lot of the differences that exist with a Speaker Paul Ryan, with the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, we know about those differences. Let's say free trade, for example. That's the establishment Republican position. Donald Trump brings a different energy, and an energy fresh from this surprising victory on the campaign trail. And I think he's going to be pushing with that personality, with the brand Trump, and with the fact that so many of his supporters remain vocal to get the gears grinding, slowly maybe at first, but to get them to produce the change. We know that he's already talking about executive orders that he's going to sign on his first day. Just what you're talking about, Bill. Regulation, especially regulation of small business. Maybe something to do with taxes, maybe something to do with immigration. But he wants to demonstrate a can-do sensibility that is going to be different for Washington, and it's going to shock some people on the Hill. And of course, but when I say on the Hill, I'm talking about that Republican majority, people who aren't used to doing business that way.
Well stated, Juan. Thank you. We're watching the Trump family arrive here, Shannon, and we saw the young son Barron there, and many were wondering where he was, and we saw him yesterday as well, and leading the way, his daughter Ivanka, which appears that she will take a significant role.
We are just a couple of hours away. Keep it right here for our continuing coverage of the inauguration of Donald Trump as our 45th president.
How long has it been since you left the agency?
I'm an ex-spy. I don't pretend to be anything more than that.
How do we deal with homegrown, do-it-yourself jihadists?
When do we start arresting people for crimes they might commit?
I don't know about you, but I'm not taking any chances. Not here.
The new president's not a fan of our covert action program.
Keeping the country safe is big business right now.
I don't think you understand how vulnerable you are.
I don't think you do.
Homeland, new season, only on Showtime. Start your free trial now.
I'm really into this car, but how do I know if I'm getting a good deal? I tell TrueCar my zip and which car I want, and TrueCar shows the range of prices people in my area actually paid for the same car, so I know if I'm getting a great price. This is how car buying was always meant to be. This is TrueCar.
I lost this much weight on Jenny Craig.
Call now and lose 20 pounds for $20. Jenny Craig offers you a dedicated personal consultant and delicious food for real results. Call now and get $50 in free food. Hurry, this offer won't last long.
Sailing through the heart of cities and landscapes with Viking, you'll see things differently. You'll get closer to iconic landmarks, to local life, and cultural treasures. It's an experience only a river cruise with Viking can give you. Spend less time getting there and more time being there. Call your travel agent or Viking for special offers now and learn more at vikingrivercruises.com.
Where are we going? What are we pursuing? Success? Greatness? Or something bigger? We believe in a calling that reaches beyond ourselves, where leadership is shaped by service, and knowledge isn't just an individual pursuit, it's something we're meant to share, where strength isn't demonstrated in power, but through humility. Answer the call at Liberty University.
Join my alliance and prepare for victory. Bring in the heavy artillery. Now that's how you strike. Mobile Strike. Download and play now. Free from the App Store.
Keep your style resolutions. Right now at Men's Warehouse, designer suits are only $199. Stay warm with 60% off all sweaters and outerwear. Plus, buy one, get one free on other great items store-wide. Men's Warehouse. Rise to the occasion.
We are Stihl, German-engineered chainsaws and landscape products.
The majority of which are made here in America by Americans.
And exported to over 90 countries around the world.
Find out why Stihl is #1 in America.
To over 90 countries around the world.
At BP, we empower anyone to stop a job if something doesn't seem right, so everyone comes home safely. Because safety is never being satisfied and always working to be better.
It is day one of a new era in American politics, and the stakes are high as President-elect Trump prepares to deliver his inaugural address, seeking national unity as the clock begins on his first 100 days. Welcome to a brand new hour of America's Newsroom on a very special day. I'm Shannon Bremen for Martha McCallum.
We're going to see Martha and Brett in about 45 minutes from now, but for the next 45 minutes, I'm Bill Hemmer along with Shannon, and there is a new day here in Washington, and the nation awaits a new president. We have seen some images already that we will never forget. Donald John Trump promising a change for the better when he assumes power just about 2 hours from now.
Carl Cameron with a bird's eye view of.
You need a website. Why not do it yourself? With Wix, you can create your own professional website.
A lot of previous inaugurations, that little bit of ceremony. The rancor and all of the election is set aside for the purpose of saying to the American people, this is how we do things in the United States.
Nomalanga kuzolunga. What I love about music is that it allows me to
Sometime.
That does not mean and I got to say to you, Bill, I've been watching a good bit of the confirmation hearings, and the questions I hear asked and many of the answers I hear being given are very familiar to me from covering these things going back many, many years. So I would say that, you know, on the surface, well, things will look and feel a lot different. But it remains to be seen, very much remains to be seen, how radically different things will be in terms of the policies put in place and the practices that the government adopts going forward.
Britt, what would you say is the president-elect's assignment today, his task for this speech that he gives to a very divided country? As with any incoming president, millions of people did not vote for you, but he's continually said he'll be the president for all people. What does he need to say today?
Well, I think he faces a somewhat daunting task, given the level of antipathy toward him, even indeed fear of him, in many quarters of this country. I think he needs to do his best to assuage those concerns. It won't be easy. He also needs to make clear to the people who have supported him, who are the people who have come here. You see the Make America Great Again hats on the people pouring in to watch these festivities, that he's not abandoning them and he's not going to change his agenda and his purpose simply to adapt to the ways of Washington. So he has a somewhat paradoxical task, it seems to me, Shannon. He has to assure people across the country that they don't have anything to fear from him, and assure the people that supported him that he really will change things. Not easy.
We saw Kellyanne Conway there. Again, we remarked earlier today. Today is an extra special day for her today, Britt, because she turns 50 years old today on the hashtag 45th swearing in the President of the United States. We also saw in the dark hair a moment ago, if our viewers caught that, Hope Hicks. Hope Hicks from from Mississippi, has been, University of Mississippi, grew up in Connecticut, has been alongside Donald Trump since day one, and he has spoken about that young woman in such amazing and glowing terms. So we'll continue to point out who we recognize when we do here. Now, with regard to the 70, I believe, is it up to 70, the number of House Democrats who will skip today? How much does that matter starting Monday, perhaps?
It only matters in the sense that it conveys to those of us watching the extent of the antipathy toward Donald Trump on a personal level. Remember this about the people who are skipping the inauguration bill, and that is that they come from districts, virtually all of them, where they don't really have to fear a Republican opponent in an election. All they need to do is be renominated, and they're good to go. And they are trying, it seems to me, to convey to their constituencies that they are resisting this man, that they're not buying into this, that they're not going along with this. I don't think it's a very gracious thing for them to have done. I think it fails to live up to the spirit of this occasion, which transcends the personality of the incoming president and is more, as we've all talked about, a celebration of the fact that we changed leadership in this country in a way that few other nations on earth do. And that is itself something very much to celebrate and always has been. Nonetheless, they're doing what is, I think, politically useful to them. I don't think it matters in any real way. These are not people who are ever going to support Donald Trump, and their failure to attend.
Sandy Cage is back. You ready to have some fun?
I need a team I can work with. The good, the extreme, and the
come from.
Well, Britt, though, to get things done, as you know, on Capitol Hill, you need votes. And you got to build coalitions. And so the question is, how do you think a President Trump tackles that? We know he's a deal maker. He's a negotiator. He's used to playing hardball, but he seems to be at times about these deals very pragmatic. Does that mean you think that he'll sit down and work across the aisle? Because, of course, there are those who signal they're more willing to do that than the others, like those who are boycotting today. But how do you think he'll play on Capitol Hill?
My guess is that the people on Capitol Hill who are themselves deal makers, that is how things get done on Capitol Hill. They get done because people sit down and hash out differences and let slide their partisan objections to each other for the purpose of getting something. And of course, to get something, you got to give something. And Trump understands that very well. And my guess is that he will, wherever possible, reach out across the aisle to try to pick up votes for things he's going to need. He's going to need, for example, Democratic votes almost certainly to pass the changes to Obamacare, the replace piece of the repeal and replace agenda. He'll need their votes. And my guess is he'll make a very considerable effort to get them. The leaders on Capitol Hill understand this as well. They, of course, if you're, for example, Paul Ryan, there's a limit to how much you can give away without facing rebellion.